When you consider the role that work plays in society and economics and in our own personal lives, it's obvious that it's really a key question both to our individual personal well-being, but really to the well-being of society in general.
And there's a certain social shame, because when you meet someone, what's the first thing you say?
Yeah. What
do you do?
Exactly.
And somebody who isn't doing in the sense that the questioner expects them to be doing is immediately put in this place where they have to either make some kind of excuse or they have to allow themselves to feel the judgment of the person, even if the individual asking doesn't feel it, but it's sort of society flows through them to why aren't you doing?
Absolutely.
I think also the idea of dignity tied to what Rabbi Wolpe was saying around shame. I think very often in this society, when you don't feel like you have a job, you don't feel useful. So within the Muslim tradition, every human being is considered to have an innate dignity. And it's a dignity that is not endowed only for Muslims, but one that is embodied in the womb from the Muslim tradition, where Ruhullah, or God, comes and breathes this notion of dignity. So I think it's a really powerful conversation to say to someone at a Seder or at an iftar in our tradition, listen, I hear what you're going through, and I also know that you come to us with full endowed dignity from God, and that we are here as a community to work with you on making sure you are able to obtain work that's meaningful to you.
And to remind somebody that
Absolutely.
It's not their job that defines them.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's something that cuts across social classes and levels in our society. Of course, for those who are dealing with joblessness, but also those who are, quote unquote, that we work with, college graduates. So many of our graduates who are leaving, over about 50%, they say, don't end up in a, quote unquote, field that they trained for. And they always ask this question, what does that say about me? Right? Going back to, who am I? What do I do? And it's this kind of sense of inherent worth and dignity. We have categorized labor in the way that we have, right? So, for example, menial jobs, right? Well, there's really no such thing as a menial job. There's menial pay, right? And I think that we have to be clear about all labor, all jobs have dignity, because all human beings have dignity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then it's compounded, I mean, we're professors, many of us, and work with young people, all of us, is that you have that, you might not get a job, but then you have the loans, or that you felt that somebody was paying for it, or somebody was sponsoring you or offering fellowships, and that somehow that I've failed them before I've even started my career.
It's compounded at every age, because when you're older, you have people depending on you. And that also puts a tremendous psychic burden. I'm supposed to be the person who ensures that you're okay. Absolutely. And I'm not okay. And I know that in theory, all of our religions teach that a person their being has dignity as opposed to their doing. And you have to try to remind people of that. And yet it is almost impossible for any of us to separate how we feel about ourselves from the role we play in society. And that's what makes this so hard.
When we think of suffering, we often think of poverty. We often think of the lower classes. But in these times, actually, even the people, say, for instance, like, I think the students in my college, Pomona College, which is a very good liberal arts college, they are, as Jonathan has put it, very concerned that they might not be able to find a job. And liberal arts education is actually in this era being questioned, humanities is being questioned, so that,
What are you going to do with that?
Right, it's not just a question of computer and digitalization, but our very jobs, even though we are secured, is also hanging on how we understand actually what it means to be human, and to actually, discuss what those implications are, and how to explore those and the meaning of those kind of questions.
How we respond to, the reality of unemployment and underemployment, so that's something to think about too, has a lot to do, it seems to me, with the social fabric and the lack of a social fabric, because even when one has to experience hardships of any sort like this, being part of something bigger than yourself, like being part of a family, being part of a community, makes a big difference. We can get through things.
Right.
But in the context of so much isolation and individualism that's characteristic, particularly of our culture in the West, I'd say, it's deadly, absolutely deadly. And as long as there's so much isolation of people and extreme individualism, it's going to be very hard to confront unemployment, that reality.
I think that's true with the caveat that sometimes your family, when you come home and say, I lost my job, is not the support system that you might aspire to come home to. But that reflects the fact that there's an anxiety that runs through the whole mobile of your life, all the people in your life, when in fact, just like when someone gets sick, because it is it's felt as a kind of social sickness, when someone loses their job.